my Survivor Series 2008 review. Let's start off with it. I thought this was a shit pay-per-view. I think this was probably the worst pay-per-view I've seen all year. It was bad. I did not enjoy it. I did not enjoy it at all. I was completely bored through most of it. That's just my opinion of it, but I did not enjoy this to a large extent at all. And yeah, I did probably get to talk about this last year's Survivor Series, because the Survivor Series matches were actually okay, and then this year's were okay, but they weren't as good as they should have been, particularly when you look at things. I am not a big fan of Survivor Series, particularly when they have more than one traditional Survivor Series match. The reason being, I used to like it when I was a kid, and I've kind of grown out of it now, because one of the reasons is because you don't have as many big stars. I mean, in the 80s you had, you had so many guys, just because you were coming out of an era where you had all these regional guys. You don't really have that now. That you could put on a pay-per-view like this and it was just stacked. And you didn't have as many pay-per-views either, so it kind of made it an event, and it was different. But given the fact that these matches are just never given enough time, never booked right, in my opinion, in the WWE. The WWE is trying to make inroads into Mexico, and they are making inroads into Mexico. And the matches like this, particularly the traditional Survivor Series matches, in my opinion, really shows where they probably have a bit to go, because the Lucha Libre promotions put on matches like this pretty regularly. They put on much better matches like this. Of course, a lot of people would say, they're a little spot happy, but you compare this, just compare both of these matches to the match that TNA had at Victory Road. Now that was, that had a lot of good people in it. They gave them time. They were very athletic guys, and they of course wrestled a fast-paced style that was probably more conclusive to a match like this. But it shouldn't have blown away the matches like it did this. Both of the matches just under-delivered. That usually is what happens. I'm not a big fan of it, because I think that, you could have a Survivor Series type match, and it should go 30 to 45 minutes easy, and it would be good, and people would be into it, and more importantly, you would give guys a chance to shine. That's one of my biggest problems with WWE right now. This pay-per-view had a lot of what I see and have seen as a lot of the big problems, as they just don't give the young guys enough time to really shine. 1 minute in a match is not enough time. You have to give them at least 5 minutes in matches like this to be able to shine, because it has to look like they belong in a match like this with the main event guys. You can't have the guys that are just thrown in there and said, okay, well, that guy's going to eat the first pin. You shouldn't be able to do that. Guys should be able to go out there, show what they can do, show they belong, so that when you do push them, or they are at some point, for whatever reason, even if it's on television, they are in a match with the guys that are the upper card or main eventers, they look like they belong in that. When you don't do that, it's been a problem within the WWE, I would say, probably for about, I'd say maybe 4 to 6 years now, where you have guys that just don't even look like they belong in the same ring with some of these guys, and it's not because they don't have the ability. It's because they haven't been given the chance, and so the fans aren't trained, are trained to think, okay, this guy doesn't belong in the ring. And even though they may know better, even though they may be smart fans, they still have that perception, and that's something that WWE has had. It needs to be fixed. This pay-per-view kind of ingrained a lot of that, though we did see some young guys get a little bit chance to shine, but still not as good as you would hope. The opening match, and this kind of surprised me that this was the opening match, was Survivor Series match, HBK, Rey Mysterio Jr., Cryme, Tyme, and the Great Khali versus JBL, Kane, MVP, and the Miz and John Morrison. This is a prime example of the WWE just not understanding, I don't think, their fan base in some extent. Because I think if you watch Raw, if you watch any time Cryme Tyme is out, and I know Cryme Tyme is not a great wrestling tag team, but they are fun and they are entertaining, and they are definitely one of the most over tag teams WWE's had in a long time. Miz and Morrison, one of the most over tag teams they've had in a long time. And then you add Priceless to it, and they're becoming one of the more over tag teams they've had in a very long time. You have 3 tag teams that you definitely can build a tag team division around to make things interesting again, to make things good again, to make things to the point where people go, ooh, maybe we can see, this has been one of the big gripes that people have had with the WWE for a while, is the tag team division, and it just kind of shows, particularly on the, I would say more on the Raw side, because I think that's what most of these teams are on, they're all pretty much are on the Raw side to an extent, even though Miz and Morrison are on ECW primarily. They still show up on Raw a lot. That it amazes me, particularly with Cryme Time. Cryme Time, even though Chad had a pretty good showing, JT didn't, and it was just kind of weird. This was, out of all of the matches, I think this was the one that could have, well, that's not true, because the other one could have gone longer too. But this match it didn't go long at all. I mean, it was very sad. I mean, it didn't even go 20 minutes. You would think that this could have at least gone 20, 25 minutes, and maybe it would have been a little bit better. In my opinion, it wasn't all that great, and it was just there. 2.25 stars, which is sad because the next match I enjoyed almost just as much, which was the Women's Divas match. Now, last year, if I remember right, and I probably should have gone back before I did this review and check, but if I remember right, I think I enjoyed last year's Divas match about as well because it was short. The women were able to go in there and basically do some spots, and they kept it short. Now, this was kept pretty short, and it was watchable, and it was entertaining, which is what you want, and I enjoyed it. Oddly enough, when I was watching it and I was thinking about it, I enjoyed this as much as I did the opener, which there is no reason, except for booking, why I should enjoy this as much as I did the opener, and I did. And that is a sad state of affairs, to be completely honest. Again, just not, it was good. It was 2.25. I would, it wasn't horrible, but, it was what it was. Then we had the Casket match, Undertaker versus Big Show. I personally was looking forward to this, as I am an Undertaker mark, but this wasn't bad. I'm sure a lot of people will probably rip this, but it wasn't, because it worked with some of the psychology, but it definitely wasn't good either. It was definitely just okay, 2 stars. But basically what you would see, just a basic average match in my opinion, which is sad considering it was a gimmick match, and gimmick matches never should be basic okay matches. They just really shouldn't be, and that's exactly what this was. Just slow, plodding, blah, blah, blah. Just not, not nearly as good as it definitely should have been. Next, we had the next traditional Survivor Series elimination match, and this was, at the point, really kind of was one of the better matches on the card. You had Batista, CM Punk, Kofi Kingston, Matt Hardy, and R-Truth versus Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, Shelton Benjamin, William Regal, and Mark Henry. Not too bad. Started out pretty good. They gave this about the same time as they gave the first match, which again, you had enough guys. You had enough guys that can go. You have enough guys that are good that you could have given this more time. It would have been okay, particularly when you come to the next match, the world title match, which was just in my opinion. But anyways, it was good. It had a lot of good spots. CM Punk was able to kind of show what he could do. Most of the guys were able to show pretty much what they could do. I still thought there was a lot of flash pins. That's one of my big problems with a match like this, particularly with the WWE kind of books it, is there's a lot of flash pins, which means pins that seemingly just come out of nowhere and you're like, huh? Instead of pins that are kind of worked up, which is what I would much rather see, which is why I would like to see longer matches like this, because I do think it would work a lot better, but I guess what are you going to do to an extent? But it was kind of nice to see, and it was definitely 3 stars. Good, just overall good match. Next we had the triple threat for the WWE Championship. Okay, as most of you know, and I'll probably have to explain this, WWE announced Jeff Hardy was hospitalized. So they came out and said that he would not be in this match. So it started off as Triple H versus Kozlov, which was complete and utter crap. First of all, you did a huge bait and switch, which most people figured they were going to do a bait and switch and they were going to add in Edge. They did add in Edge by the end, but they didn't at the beginning. They should have at least added in Edge at the beginning. I think that would have been better. That said, we got Triple H and Kozlov for probably about 10 minutes. And that was 10 minutes of utter crap. Apparently Vince is very big on Kozlov. He should have been proven today of why he wasn't. The fans hated this match. They despised this match. I'm sure Triple H will say it wasn't his fault. It was Kozlov's fault. But Triple H should have been able to carry this guy to something that was at least decent enough for the fans to be into it, and they weren't. I'm sure they'll also blame the fact that the fans were ticked off because Jeff was not in the match. I wouldn't say that either, because they definitely had done enough to where the fans knew Jeff probably wasn't going to be there by the time the match happened. They were ticked off about it, as justly they should have. This was shit. This was crap. Now, we get to the end. Now, near the end, this got a little better, because what happened was this. It got to the point where both guys were down, and then Vicky came out and said Edge was going to be in the match, so Edge, being the opportunist, came out, which fit his character and fit, the whole storyline with him. Then Jeff Hardy came out of nowhere, looking like he could have wrestled, tried to attack Edge, ended up hitting Triple H with a chair, which cost Triple H the match, and got a spear from Edge, and Edge is now your world champion, which is good, because Triple H's champion was stale as fuck. Let's be completely honest. It was horrible. Him as champion did not work at all. Edge's champion is a good thing. But the match was pretty crappy up until we got to the end, and then when we got to the end, it became at least watchable, and I think that part of it worked. I'm giving it 3 3/4 stars, though that's probably high, because they did try this bait and switch thing. But the end of the match was really good and was exciting, so that part of it worked. But yeah, definitely, just not good stuff. Next we got the World Heavyweight. Then we got the next title match, which was Chris Jericho versus John Cena, and this match was good, not great. Reason being because John Cena was definitely rusty. I think anyone that actually watched the match could see that. He definitely wasn't hitting on all cylinders. I think it was a mistake to have him in a match with Chris Jericho by himself the first time out. I really think this should have been a triple threat match with Batista. You could have really still built up, if they really want to do, as the rumor is, Batista versus Cena at WrestleMania. This would have been a good way to build it up, with Cena getting the win over maybe Jericho, after Batista pretty much had Jericho beat, type of thing. They gave this match time, but like I said, Cena was definitely rusty. You could definitely tell, and that really hurt the match. Overall, this was a boring pay-per-view. This was just outright boring. Like I said, I probably overrated the Triple H match, but like I said, I really did like the ending. I did think, storyline-wise, it worked. It's one of those things where I know a lot of people say if TNA did the same thing, I would rip them up one side and down the other. That's probably true, but I've always said that I think when the WWE does things like this, they do it about 1,000 times better than TNA does, even though this still sucked. But just, people can call me biased or whatever, but it's just kind of the way I've always seen it. So there is that. But this was a bad pay-per-view. This was a bad pay-per-view, in my opinion. I was bored, senseless during this pay-per-view. Nobody, in my opinion, came out looking better on this pay-per-view than they did before. A lot of the booking decisions to me left, as is most of the time when it comes, particularly with the Survivor Series matches, me striking my head. The only one that made any sense to me was the Divas match. That was the only one. The Casket match was probably one of the worst Casket matches we have seen, and definitely one of the worst the worst Undertaker match we've probably seen since maybe he took on Khali. And maybe even worse than that. Depending on how much you like the Undertaker. Just not a good card all the way around. Bad, bad, bad stuff. I'm sure people are going to hate that Cena won, though I will admit at least it's something different, because the stuff with Chris Jericho, while I like Chris Jericho, just I think part of it was really falls that I don't. Part of it is Batista. Part of it is I don't think people wanted to see Chris Jericho and Batista feud. You had Batista win, and I just don't think the booking has been solid enough to just really do anything. And they definitely need to start pushing younger guys. They need to start making guys look better. They're not making the younger guys look better, and and the product feels stale because of it. Because the same guys are pretty much in the same spots that have been in the same spots for years now. That's usually the case in wrestling, but you definitely need to mix things up a little bit. They're not mixing things up. It's like they're on cruise control. The people in charge, in my opinion, don't know what they're doing. They don't understand that, like I continually have said, I think the wrestling has changed and left the WWE behind, similar to how it did in the early 90s. And I don't think they realize that to an extent. And I don't mean in-ring style. Whenever I say that, people think I mean in-ring style. I don't necessarily mean in-ring style. I mean the way they present it. I mean the guys that they're pushing, the way that they're pushing guys, that sort of thing, the stories that they're telling. I just don't think it's the same thing. You don't have the right guys booking, in my opinion. But this was definitely maybe the worst pay-per-view I've seen all year, as I was completely and utterly bored shitless during this pay-per-view. But anyways, there was some good stuff on it, but just not enough good stuff, because I just felt underwhelmed and blah about a lot of it. So anyways, I'm out.